If you are a competitive player and you're looking to get better at the game, this is the video for you. It's not going to be the flashiest content, it actually is quite grindy, but as promised, I do want to do a deeper dive into Ruby Amethyst locations and talk about how the deck has to adapt and play based on meta trends and certain matchups. So before going over the actual deck list, which you'll see at the end and is likely linked in the description, it's important to understand how this deck needs to play the mirror match and how you tech this deck in order to play in the mirror match. In this matchup here, we're going second, which in and of itself is a huge detriment, but this was a 25-minute grind fest, and I've reduced it down to 16 minutes by speeding up the footage. But you can see here my hand is full of uninkables, so our mulligan was terrible. Saving grace is that the opponent doesn't develop any kind of early board. However, we're not really able to take full advantage of that. We get a couple of lore in on the early quest, but we know that the opponent is going to have bangers in their hand to drop soon enough. They're going to have likely 3 drops, 4 drops, 5 drops that are going to start threatening my small board here. We actually miss an ink on turn 3, which is crazy, because I only play 15 uninkables in the deck, and we have like 7 of them, like over half of the uninkables, or almost half of the uninkables in our hand already. Unfortunately, I end up losing my Rafiki for free here, which really hurts, because bouncing that back for ink or something, or using it to actually take out a threat, would have been really nice. I opt to crash my Cusco, which is a terrible play, just to draw into yet another uninkable. I put down a Pinocchio just in case I draw a bounce card next turn that I might be able to play. But even if I do, I probably ink it and try to play a rabbit. So my opening hand is absolutely terrible. My opponent ends up singing Friends, so they've got the card draw. And they develop a Mim Snake to save their Fox, which is really good here. And then they get one of the key cards in the mirror match first in the Maui's Fishhook. Why is this card relevant? Well, because Maui in this matchup, unlike in the Rise of the Floodborn mirror match, Maui is very, very important. Not only does it represent incredible value with the now used Pinocchios or Latch Ditch Effort, which is sometimes being teched into the deck thanks to Bannable Harka's amazing video on Ruby Amethyst, but also for the sheer fact that it is a one-stop shop to take out locations. You can use the Fishhook to boost up pretty much anything and throw a 7 body in the Mim Fox or a 9 body in the Maui itself into a location. So my opponent ends up outing my rabbit with a Madame Medusa, and this opponent knows what they're doing. This was on the competitive ladder, decently high up, so the opponents aren't necessarily noobs. And Bannable Harka again talked about this in his video, where he said most people don't take care of their rabbits, and it's a very important card, especially in the mirror match. And that's absolutely correct, because it is the way that you keep options in your hand to deal with the board your opponent is developing. So each rabbit that I lose here and not keeping my rabbit safe by bouncing them back to hand is a big problem. The opponent unfortunately is going to be able to recycle one of their Madame Medusas, and they're opting to play the Mini Surfer still, which is very interesting. Sadly, we don't have the Fishhook yet. We do play 2 copies of it because it would have been really nice to out the Mini Surfer when it quested. So at this point, we are going to be forced to use the Madame Medusa to stop the Surfer from questing by outing it right away. They redrop their Medusa to once again deal with another one of my rabbits. So that's 2 of my rabbits gone. I am not taking care of my rabbits. But what can I do, right? My hand is full of uninkables. We end up drawing into a Maui here, which is half decent. And these 3 Be Prepareds will eventually come good. But it's just, you drew them too early, and they really cost me in the early game here, because I could have developed a much stronger board and got further away from the opponent in the game if I would have drawn into stronger cards like goats and things like that to develop early on and just kind of get ahead in the lore. But because we're in the situation we're in, we have to play very cautiously, because now we're heading into Ink 7 range, where my opponent likely has a Be Prepared or 2 as well that they can drop at any time to kind of clawback advantage. They're going to clean up the board a little bit, and now they are definitely in control with this rabbit. Thankfully, they didn't snake it back into the hand. We're going to opt to drop an Ursula here, and I'm like, yeah, most people only play 2 Madame Medusas, and maybe I thought the opponent played 2 and they only played 1. I don't really remember, but they're going to have another one here, and this is the one like major weakness of Ursula now, because otherwise it would be great. It would basically force a Be Prepared or a Maleficent Dragon from the opponent, in order to deal with, but now Madame Medusa on 6 can deal with it as well. So unfortunately we do lose it, but it did drain a lore and draw us a card, and the lore drain in this matchup is actually still very relevant. We're going to end up outing one of the opponent's rabbits there with the Maui, and I think I inked the Maui, which again you could argue is a mistake. Should I have inked a location? Because playing this location here is a huge misplay. I don't know if I just forgot because I wasn't playing them earlier, but yeah, the Madame Medusa there takes it out for free. So proving my point when I say Maui's fishhook is super important in the mirror match because of things like that. It basically shuts down all locations for the sheer fact that, you know, Queen's Castle is 7 toughness and Mim Fox, which is a 4 plus 3 a fishhook, is 7 to take out the Queen's Castle on summon, right? Because it has rush, and then obviously Maui does as well with the fishhook. So I'm thinking here, what do I want to do? I don't want to necessarily lose my Maui, and I do, if possible, want to out this opponent's rabbit and just keep them off the card draw, because like my opponent was doing, I know that rabbit is very key in this matchup, and if I can get them out of rotation, that's going to be strong for me because it's going to prevent the opponent from drawing into the answers that they need, and eventually this grind game will come to a halt, right? One of us is going to end up developing a wide board that the opponent can't deal with because we've used up our Be Prepared, and that's the state you have to get to in order to win this matchup, which is why it's so grindy and such a long mirror, because you're playing a very conservative game. You're not overdeveloping your board here, you're bouncing things back, you're trying to maintain advantage with the rabbit the best you can in the bounce cards. So again, the Merlin Mim package is still very relevant in the Into the Inklands meta. The opponent is just, I don't even know how many cards that is. What is that, 10, 11 cards in hand to my 5 here, and they just had 5 cards in hand a couple of turns ago. Nice to see that Maui inked because they want to protect something with the fishhook, most likely. Oh, they protect the fox here. Okay, interesting. They probably have something to bounce fox back. So I'm going to end up redropping my Maui now and taking out the opponent's Medusa. I'm going to leave my Pinocchio up because just in case I draw a bounce card, I might want to bounce the Pinocchio back to hand. They're going to end up dropping their own Maui. So I think, I don't know, this is Maui like number 3 maybe for them, but they haven't used any Be Prepareds yet. So right now this board state doesn't look too threatening. They of course redrop rabbit, and again you can see how important rabbit is in this mirror match. Like the opponent just looks like they're going to run away with the game. They have more ink, they have the tempo, they've got the fishhook established first, they've still got rabbits in rotation, they've got more cards in hand. Like it's looking pretty bad for us here, right? I'm going to opt to Medusa away this rabbit, so I think that is their 3rd rabbit, right? And again, it sucks that they're going to end up drawing more cards there. Yeah, I just checked their graveyard real quick, or their discard pile, and see that 3 rabbits have been dealt with. And my hand is, again, still pretty underwhelming. They drop a Maleficent Dragon here, and I'm like, okay, this is manageable because they're still only going to be questing for 2. This Maui only represents Singing Friends on the other side, basically. I'm going to end up dropping the snake to bounce the Pinocchio back after questing, and I think I just pass here. Because again, no sense in dropping the location because the Maui with the fishhook will just take it out instantly, right? The opponent drops a Cusco, so again, they know not to play into the Be Prepared just yet. They quest with the dragon to put them up to 6, so they are catching up. And then again, they are playing around the Be Prepared, and they end up saving their damaged Maui, which feels really bad. They drop their own location, knowing that, again, I'm probably struggling to out that. And they are absolutely right because I don't have my own fishhook. Having a fishhook here would be really nice because it would just be drop fishhook and just boost the fox to take out the Queen's Castle. Unfortunately, I do have to invest my Maui, but at least I have a snake to bounce it back so that it's saved from a potential Be Prepared. But I don't think the opponent would be prepared here, right? Because they still have their Maleficent Dragon on board. So I pass turn. The opponent is likely going to go to 10 lore. They drop, I don't even know if this is like their 3rd or 4th Medusa. And I'm just like, this is really weird because, yeah, usually lists don't play more than 2. But this guy was opting for at least 3. Which isn't necessarily bad because the Medusa is very, very relevant in the meta, right? Deals with Robin Hood, Beast, obviously Ursula, which isn't really played anymore. And then, anything that's small that is also a threat. It's a pretty good card. Yeah, so as anticipated, they do quest up to 10. They have a pretty wide board, and the opponent absolutely knows that this is going to fetch the Be Prepared from my hand, and they are absolutely right. They are going to be able to draw off the Cusco, so again, I just have to live with that. They're up to 7 in hand. They still have the fishhook, and we have 6 in hand, so now they have 8, and they are ahead on ink as well. So it's still not a great position. They revealed their last rabbit here, and I'm like, all right, this is probably worth Be Preparing again. The Eric will quest for 2, the rabbit for 1, puts them at 13. The Eric is a problem to deal with when it's played because it, takes out your card when it's banished. So I just have to deal with it. They draw off rabbit, they draw for turn, and just like that, you can see how much advantage the opponent is generating here. They make a very awkward play, And it's actually kind of interesting because they are likely drawing into their 1-drops, right? If they're not inking them, because they didn't have the 1-drops in the early game. So you're eventually going to end up drawing into them in the mid to late game here. And they're not necessarily bad, because here you can see they're just putting questing pressure on board and it demands an answer, but they're obviously not the strongest thing either, right? So I'm just going to Pinocchio Exert to slow the opponent down, drop the Maui, and take out the Crab. The issue with doing this is if my Maui does get outed, I'm losing potential answers to locations that the opponent is going to end up dropping here, right? Like if they end up dropping 1 or 2 more Queen's Castles, I am in trouble, because they are already ahead on the lore, and well, they're on the play, so, and have tempo control, so they're going to be ahead on ink if they want as well. And it's just a problem, right? They can move stuff to the location. I can't out it right away, which means they're going to draw a ton of cards. They're going to gain the 2 lore. And this is why you need to make sure you're playing this match correctly, which I don't think I necessarily was in this matchup, because I was kind of, I don't want to say wasting my Mauis, but like in hindsight, what else am I really going to do here? They quest up to 11 and fish hook their Maleficent Dragon and pass turn. So I'm going to opt to quest with the Pinocchio and not be prepared yet. I'm going to Fox back the Pinocchio after questing. So you can see me thinking about this line for quite a bit, because I'm like, do I let the opponent quest and go to 13? It seems kind of risky, because we know that Ruby Amethyst has different ways to close out the game, and if I let them get too far ahead, they don't need to quest. Even if I'm dealing with all the stuff they're dropping on board, they can kind of just gain lore in other ways, right? Spellbook, which isn't really played anymore, goats, etc., are all problems. Speaking of, we drop our own goat and pass turn. The opponent is very unlikely to be prepared the board here or sing it with the Maleficent. They have yet another Maui, and that's going to take out my Mim Fox. That's really good value for them. And then they're going to drop another Prince Eric, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I guess I just have to be prepared now, right? At least the goat will get me a lore, or 2 lore, so it got me a total of 3 when I played it, when I quest with it, and then when it leaves the field. So we draw a rabbit, which is actually pretty good considering on 11 ink here, we can drop the Be Prepared and follow it up with rabbit. Again, because Lady Tremaines aren't really played, we're not at too much of a risk of losing this rabbit on the play here from the opponent. If they were, I think they've gone through like 3 or 4 Medusas anyways, so it's like it's almost impossible that there'd be more in the deck. They drop Maui and play Snake, so it kind of reveals to me that their hand is very, very limited. We're going to sing Friends, thank goodness we drew that, and then drop the Ursula most likely to bait out the Be Prepared. But then I'm like, well, I probably want to try to keep the Ursula, so after bouncing back rabbit with the Fox, because again, we want to do our best to preserve our final rabbit here after outing all 5 of the opponents, we're going to Fox it back and draw another card. And then I'm scared of the Be Prepared, so I'm going to drop the Snake and bounce back the Ursula as well. So what this signals to my opponent is, you know, Lorcana's pretty similar. You have to deal with my board unless you want me to keep keeping up with you on lore, and you know I have the Ursula. I probably have the stronger hand out of the 2 of us, right? You can see the opponent drops a Cusco and nothing else because they plan to Be Prepared the board, right? So I'm debating if I want to play into that and drop the Ursula, and I'm like, the card draw and the lore drain, why not? Oh no, I don't do that. Okay, I end up playing a goat and a rabbit most likely then. Yeah, that was gonna be the next line. So this does sacrifice the rabbit, but opting to keep the Ursula here in order to out the Be Prepared is, I guess in the long term, more of a strategic move, because once I know I've kind of cleaned up my opponent's hand by forcing them to utilize all their resources, there's very little things they can top deck that'll deal with the Ursula, right? This is, I think, their second Be Prepared here, or their third, I don't even remember. But we're going to be able to trigger a couple effects. The opponent gets to draw off their Cusco. They still have 4 ink to work with. Do they have a drop? They have the Queen's Castle, which is a problem. So at 14 to 14, we are really up against it, and I'm just like, I think the opponent's gone through 3 Maui, so hopefully they just don't have the 4th in hand. I'm going to drop my Jim Hawkins, play one of my mirror rooms or mirror chambers for free, and this is threatening game, so the opponent has to deal with either the location and or the Jim Hawkins, so they have to either drop a Be Prepared, have another Maui, etc. Otherwise, I just win the game next turn. I did keep the Ursula in reserve. They do gain 2 lore off of the Queen's Castle, and if I don't out this Queen's Castle soon, it's going to just end up winning the game for the opponent here, right? They drop the Be Prepared on the singular Jim Hawkins. I think that's their 3rd one now, and they opt to drop the Maui here, and undoubtedly, again, just boost it up to 9 and instantly take out a location. Because otherwise, we were potentially threatening game, going to 18 next turn, and then if we draw goat or something, we could goat, bounce goat, and win the game. They're going to use their second fish hook and give their Maui evasive. We top deck a Friends, which is okay. Seeing my opponent only on 2 cards here, I'm playing 3 Be Prepared. I'm like, let me just drop this Ursula. And this thing is threatening game. Like, you have to out the location, and unless you have another Be Prepared or another Madame Medusa, and I don't think they do. I think I actually counted 4 in their discard earlier. There's nothing they can do to out this Ursula. Well, I mean, technically they could have Maleficent Dragon still, but nobody really plays Lady Tremaine. So I'm going to end up hard casting Friends, just so that I can ink and play the Minnie Mouse and I think move my characters to the location. Because if the Maui ends up taking out the location, my Minnie and Ursula quest for game. So they're going to need, out of those 2 cards in hand and the 1 card they draw, a card to deal with this board. They go to 17, and this is also relevant, right? Because if the Ursula didn't drain that lore, the opponent goes to 20 on their following turn. So getting them back down to 17 means I can buy 1 extra turn off of not getting, taking a loss to the mirror room or mirror chamber. The opponent Be Prepares the board as they had to have, otherwise they lose. And it's, I don't know, was that their 3rd one or was that their 4th one? I thought I already counted 3, but maybe that was their 3rd one. They have a Rafiki on board that I have to drop a Be Prepared on. And my hope now is that their final card isn't something that can really deal with readied characters or the location, because now I have 4 lore on board on my next turn, 2 from the location and 1 from each of the characters, which will put me to 20 to win the game. Off of the mirror room or mirror chamber, I don't know why I keep calling it room, the opponent only goes to 19 thanks to the Ursula draining the lore, and at this point we're going to be able to finally close out the match because the opponent drew the level 1s at the end of the game. What you're seeing on screen here is the deck list that I used, and I will be doing a deep dive on this later, but hopefully this matchup, this meta mirror, showed you what to expect and why building the deck a certain way, what good choices are, what bad choices are, is very important. We're going to wrap it up there though, guys. If you made it this far in the video, a like would be appreciated, and a comment. Thank you again for watching. Quantum is out.